Hello there, and welcome to Tapcaf Transmissions, the only Star Wars podcast where I am currently flying solo. Unfortunately, Justin is not able to be around right now. He is busy parenting. But we're going to be doing a quick review of Ahsoka Episode 3, some general discussion of that, and a bit of where I think the season might be going. So it won't be incredibly long because it is just going to be me talking. I might take a couple questions from chat depending on if there's many of those. But tonight we're also going to be doing a Starfield stream over on the YouTube or on the gaming side, so that should be fun too. A lot of sci-fi tonight. So this will also kind of be in place of my standalone video review because this is just me doing a review talking without a script, which I guess my thoughts will probably be pretty similar in scripted or unscripted form, just maybe better formed in scripted form. But overall, I'm enjoying the season so far. I do kind of wish episode 3 was a little bit longer. Everything we got there, I thought was pretty good. So I'm happy with where things are going so far. But one of the things that did stand out to me was that it seems like we have uh we've seen most of what's in the trailers so far. Like there's still the shots with Balin, Ahsoka, and like the fights that are going on Cetos, but I can't imagine that there's going to be too many. Like I don't think that's going to be spread over a bunch of episodes. I think everything that's outstanding from the trailers, except for maybe one or two things, is going to be from the next episode. Like maybe the shot where Jason seemed to be in the cockpit with them heading out somewhere, maybe that's the end of next episode. Uh, but maybe that's a little bit later. But yeah, so we still got like 4 episodes of completely unknown what's going on. So I guess I guess there's three main sections to the episode where you have the first part, which is kind of just going over uh, Sabine and her training. Then you kind of have the B plot of the episode, which is Hera and the senators. Senators Yono would be or being just terrible, and the third section is kind of the arrival at Cetos and the space battle there. So like each of those sections I think was pretty strong on its own, though. Like it didn't have the same feeling of like a semi-complete narrative that the prior 2 episodes I think did have internally. So this is definitely a setup episode for them. But uh the first thing I think with Sabine is we got a lot of pretty open discussion of what Sabine's limits might be and whether she could even use the Force. And this is something that like they've explicitly addressed it a couple times now on the show of like talent is a factor, but you can kind of break past that. And I've seen a lot of discussion saying like, oh, well, does this mean that it doesn't matter for any of the other stuff? Like, why doesn't everyone just flip around and use the Force all the time? But like, I think they've done a good job of addressing that within the show. And I don't think this is particularly out of line with stuff that has happened before. Like, this isn't a revolutionary reimagining uh, of Star Wars. Like no one seemed to mind that George Cardass was able to train to move a cup himself over a long period of time once he stopped threatening the Angti monks. And I don't think Sabine would have quite the same difficulty that George did of leaving behind his selfishness. And like we've always been told the force is everywhere in everyone, and now it just becomes a matter of like how difficult is it going to be for person A versus person B to access it. Because like I think another example would be someone like Han, where everyone it like Kanan and Hera actually were talking about this in Rebels, and I think it's pretty applicable. Where when Kanan was training Sabine with the darksaber, and Hera says, "Well, she doesn't have the Force," and Kanan says, "The Force is in everyone. She's just blocked." And I think like Han is the character you'd think of as having the biggest mental block, as far as aligning himself to the kind of mindset and discipline you'd probably need to be able to use the Force. So I think her being able to use the Force at some point is perfectly reasonable, even if it isn't in such a flashy way as some of the other Jedi are able to, or at least isn't as quick to reach some of those points. But that seems to be pretty clearly where we're heading. Like I'd seen a lot of pushback when I did the first videos on the trailers, talking about how like that seems to be what the trailers were setting up, and like Sabine in the fight with Shin, which I think is just going to be next episode, where she kind of puts out her hand and Shin says, "You have no powers." Like I don't necessarily think she's going to use the Force there. I think we're being set up for her to take another loss on Cetos and then successfully use the Force to some extent in another fight with Shin later on in the season. And I think that's kind of what Sabine's arc is going to top out at this in this series, is like beating Shin in the final or second to final episode. Maybe I'm wrong, and she'll take Shin out in in the upcoming one. My connection seems to be pretty bad right now, so hopefully I'm not getting cut off too much. But yeah, like I enjoyed the training with Hu Yang. I think what Ahsoka said was a pretty reasonable assessment of how this should work or how this could work. And it seems like Hu Yang's role in the show is kind of to be this ossified traditional view of the Jedi and how it's limiting in connecting other people to the Force. So Hu Yang probably doesn't reflect what a lot of individual Jedi might have thought, but as kind of the representation of the Order being stuck in their traditions and kind of blinded to what's going on in the rest of the galaxy or unable to look past that. I think that's kind of what he's there to represent. And I don't think he's being set up that way to show later on that he was right. And I think Hu Yang actually benefited from Senator Xiono being in the episode, because like Hu Yang was an absolute dickbag in this episode, but just because of how obstinate the senator was being, I feel like that's gonna slip out of people's minds a bit more. Thank you, Ali. The donation asking, what do you think of Thrawn being an anti-hero? So I think that gets that could be like a 2-hour discussion on its own. Like the way that Timothy Zahn has developed him more recently is supposed to be more sympathetic. He's supposed to be more of a heroic character, but then the anti-hero part comes in from the fact that he's just a member of the Empire and he has the stuff we know about him from Heir to the Empire. And I don't know if that's quite anti-hero material. I think it's just like Timothy's. So I've done a video about Mara Jade with this, and Timothy Zahn has a thing where he can't let his villains stay villains, not because they get redeemed, but because he kind of writes them in a way where we're just supposed to say like, oh, he was never actually that bad to begin with. This all the bad stuff he did was for some other reason. But the Empire and the Emperor are like they're bad in Star Wars. That is not a questionable debate. Like Star Wars has its own conception of this like epistemological evil where Palpatine is very much that. And then you kind of get the stuff where it's like, oh, well, what if we didn't have the Sith Lord blowing up the planets? So like, okay, well, Tarkin blew up the planets. The Sith Lord wasn't responsible for blowing up the planets. He was responsible in that, like, he was running everything. He was perfectly happy for it to happen, but it's not like without Palpatine, everyone was just great in the Empire and we needed some strong voice. Like there's a lot of apologism that happens for the Empire in like the later parts of the expanded universe. I might have to go and close my door, close my window, but I'll be back in a second. So yeah, the stuff we get about how Thrawn is actually good, it turns into like, oh, well, he was part of the Empire, but he was only serving the Empire because he wanted to protect the Chiss. And it's like, okay, well, no, he committed multiple genocides. The first thing we get introduced with him is that he's wiped out multiple species. And it's not like the Chiss are this like great little enclave of not being dicks either. Thank you as well, Joel. I'll get to yours in a second. But yeah, so like Thrawn doesn't push for any real change within the Chiss when he's there. He doesn't push for any real change within the Empire when he's there. So he's subjecting the rest of the galaxy as much as possible to the Imperial reign in the name of protecting the Chiss ascendancy from a threat that he doesn't tell anyone else about. He makes no other effort to subvert these threats and he doesn't inform anyone that there's a danger out there. So he's not acting from a good place in that sense either. And it's really hard to get on board with the idea of like, oh, Thrawn is actually a good guy, when even if you look at the newer interpretations that Timothy Zahn has done, the motivation, it's not like he doesn't join the Empire anymore. It's not like he fixes those problems with what he was doing before. So I think we're going to get into a position or a situation where no matter which way Thrawn is handled in the upcoming stuff, well, whether it's Ahsoka or whether it's Dave Filoni's movie, if he remains a like strict villain in the original Thrawn trilogy sense, that's going to have people who are primarily fans of some of the new Timothy Zahn content kind of saying like, oh, well, he's supposed to be a good guy, when like really it's not really in the text either. Like that's what Zahn wants to position him as, but he hasn't corrected the underlying things that make Thrawn a villain, or that would make it okay to do the things that he's doing anyways. So, and I'd have more patience for it if it was a conscious decision by him to do it that way, but I don't think that's his intent. Like, it just seems like sometimes he just wants to say like, oh, you get rid of the Sith part and the Empire's good actually, so it makes it okay that Thrawn is there and doing all that stuff. And we'll just ignore the parts where he says he's committed these genocides because he's doing it for ostensibly a good reason. But I don't think the reason is ostensibly all that good, and I don't think it's effective. So it's either incompetence in the name of a bad idea, or I don't know. But it's, yeah. I I have problems with the Thrawn was good all along thing. I wouldn't mind like if he gets reinterpreted into in some way having subverted the Empire or worked against it, but I think you do need to add more to it than just, oh, Thrawn's doing what he's doing to protect the Chiss Ascendancy, when like protect them from what? Why doesn't he tell anyone else about this problem? When it becomes obvious that like the Empire is going to fall, why doesn't he say, okay, the practical, if he's doing it from like a realistic practical standpoint of, I need help to fight something else off, so I'm going with the Empire because we need a unified whatever to fight them. Okay, let's take that premise. Once the Empire falls and once it becomes obvious the Empire is not this government, why not just make a practical alliance with the people actually in charge? So we'll see if something like that happens, and if like all of this setting Thrawn up as a villain turns into the New Republic works with Thrawn against the Grists or something, then maybe, but I don't know. It's it's a whole thing. But we'll see where it goes. It is like a thing, like it's harder to talk about all that off the cuff, but I've had some thoughts about it. It'd be better if I can address it in the form of a pre-planned video, but thank you. So Joel's also asking, I'm thinking Thrawn at the end of episode 4, the beginning of episode 5, since that is Flown directed episode. Thoughts? I think that would line up with the fact that we seem to be getting them going to going from Cetos to Peridia at the end of next episode. So like it seems like next episode is probably going to end with the Eye of Sion, if that's what the hyperspace ring is called, going there with the baddies on board, and then the Purgle maybe takes Sabine and Ahsoka. So I think we are going to get Thrawn soon, but it's kind of sad that Zeb's not going with them if that's what's happening, or if like Hera shows up and takes them some way. But anyways, I do think that's a pretty safe bet, but he's got to show up before episode 8, right? Or so there's who knows. Thank you again, Joel. Saying another question: thoughts on the theory that Morgan Elsbeth could be the new Rook, and the Night Sisters taking the position of the Noghri? Potentially. It depends on what the definition of Rook ends up being in that sense. Like, clearly working with Thrawn, clearly serving him in some way. Is she going to learn about some like betrayal of Thrawn against the Night Sisters that's going to make her and them turn against him? I don't think that'll happen. Like, the Peridia does seem like it'll probably be the home of some Night Sisters. I did kind of want to talk about this, so thanks for bringing it up. Where like it seems like there will be Night Sisters in Peridia, or maybe in Peridia. It's unclear how the structure of the place is, but is it a Peridia zone? Is Peridia the galaxy? Is it on Peridia? But I feel like there would be like a Night Sister culture there, but like were they brought there by the Rakatans or something? Is there's just so many coincidences or so many inspirations from Rakatan design that I think that's going to be kind of the background of it. I don't think it's going to be like, oh, you get there and there's these weird guys with eye stalks, but I think the background lore will probably be more like that. But like it would make sense for the Night Sisters in general, for any Night Sisters to be opposed to the Empire and Thrawn, which I don't know if it's like Morgan and a different sect that are okay with it, but I don't think they're going to reuse that plot line entirely. So I don't think it'll be like Morgan serves him now, he comes back, and then she stabs him kind of deal. Like maybe Rook is still alive himself. Who knows? But yeah, so I think we kind of talked about a lot of the Sabine training pretty thoroughly there. The whether it's fair for her to become a jet or not a Jedi necessarily, but a Force user and then maybe train as a Jedi. Who knows? Depend like so Ahsoka doesn't want the label. Ahsoka doesn't want the label for her. So the Hu Yang element of it with the Jedi. So I think that covers it pretty well. So I think Sabine is going to win her rematch with the Cup. If George can do it, Sabine can do it. Uh, for the Hera stuff, it is frustrating watching those centers. Like, are they a committee of some kind? Is that a specific committee that is in charge of something, and that's why Mon Mothma brought them to this call? Or are they just the centers who happen to be around? But the it does make me want to watch Resistance because I haven't actually watched the show. I know like that's Kaz's dad, so the main character's dad is that senator. Uh, so Hera kind of wipes the floor with him in that debate, but it's like they know there was this stuff stolen. That's the thing. Like they have evidence. Hera knows this thing was stolen, knows where it was taken, and all they need to do is send a scout and then be fine. So Justin was joking about how he's basically just Borsk failure now, and I think that fits. I think it's a good comparison. He's the now the obstructionist that's gonna make things easier for Thrawn. Like the fleet with Home One, they're floating around there. They could just jump to one place and destroy a giant hyperspace ring, and life would probably be better for everyone. But uh, like it seems like Hera is going to just get leave from Akbar. So maybe Akbar is the next cameo we're getting next episode, and he tells her she can take the ghost, take Jason, and go find Hera and Sabine. Uh I've seen some people saying like what was I going to say? Oh, that like, oh well, someone should get Luke, but I don't think we're gonna see Luke in here. But I think we're gonna get Hera going. Jason, it seemed like they were going to change his hair color. I'm unclear, like maybe he was born with it, or maybe he dyed it green. So is his hair just that color because of his Twi'lek ancestry? Or is he just like channeling some Aunt Sabine and some of his mom to dye his hair nice Twi'lek green? Do you think the writers are moving Sabine away from being an explosive expert? I don't think so, because we saw what she was doing with like the droids and like the droid's head in episode 2, where that was going to explode. She seemed okay with that possibility. And I think that working on that droid was kind of showing her techie side still coming through, and that's why Ahsoka went to her in the first place. So I do think that's still a big part of her personality and a big part of her character. Like that's what got us to her in the first place. That's why she was messing with the map. And I think like the explosives thing is just a subset of her tech thing, and that's still unfazed. So I think that's still handling, or that's still holding up. But yeah, so the space battle, I thought it was fine. It didn't. I thought the Mandalorian one was better. The I thought the fighter designs were cool. I'm not sure what the plan was with going out on the wing and like blocking some shots, because like I guess it's all you could do in that situation if you're Ahsoka. But if you're everyone else, just try to shoot the places she's not. And it did lead to some of the more fun character moments with Like I think some of the lines from Ahsoka and Sabine and like the banter with Hu Yang, I feel like that brought the characters out of some of the angstiness in the first two episodes, which was a little bit painful. So like having Hu Yang, Ahsoka, and Sabine just being awful to each other all the time, or being like incredibly stoic or whatever. I didn't love that in the first two episodes, so I'm glad that hasn't lasted. Uh, I know we're not getting like teenage Ahsoka, but I don't think being an adult means you're going to be this like stoic kind of jerk to someone who is theoretically your your apprentice or your friend even. So I've seen people also say like Hera was too stoic in the first two episodes, but I didn't really get that vibe from her. So maybe that's just me. But I think that's kind of most of what I was wanting to talk about with it. Like we have those three main plot points. We had the yeah, I didn't think there was much of a chance of her coming out with her own fighter there. I don't. I'm always surprised already by how much space they seem to have in that ship. So I don't think there's like a hidden fighter in there. But one thing that was kind of interesting is when they're doing the training, Ahsoka has like this big wall full of lightsabers. So I don't know if she's been like collecting some from any fallen Jedi that she'd either helped or tracked down, or maybe some Inquisitors she'd killed or something. But there was like five or six there, and I wasn't able to identify any of them. I didn't spend much time looking at them, but it was just a thing that I saw there that unless she has a hobby of just like building lightsabers, but that's probably not going to become an important plot point. But I thought it was an interesting detail. Like it was a very visible thing too, so who knows? The episode did kind of redirect some Merrick speculation, because I mean his voice is distinctly either yeah, like Hu Yang probably uses them for training and holding them, but where do you like I don't know if he made them or if he just had those around, but the uh with Merrick, his voice sounds distinctly alien or like something's messed up in his throat, or because yeah, maybe he has the helmet to make his voice sound messed up just so he can hide who he is. But I don't think the star. I've never been a big Star Killer bandwagoner for him. Uh, I I don't see what that would add, and I don't see how like there's nothing that really points to it being Star Killer other than additional voices, Sam Witwer being in the credits, because Sam Witwer is a voice in like every Star Wars thing, but the fact that he's also Star Killer means like every little possibility that like, oh, is this Star Killer? It's like the fucking butterfly meme. But I'm still not sure if he's an alien or a human. So I think like I'm gonna stop caring about references in Filoni's names, because like Balin and Shin are wolf references. Merrick is the wolf reference with like the King Arthur thing. I was thinking like maybe that's a hint at part of the story, but I think it's more likely just like Filoni likes wolves. He's gonna make references to wolves and names, so I'm not gonna put too much weight in those anymore. I might mention them, but I'm not necessarily gonna like build any theories around what's gonna happen to them. But and one of the other things I guess that I noticed after the prior episodes is one of the changes to Ahsoka, or not Ahsoka, to Sabine's armor is she has the white feathers painted onto the top and the middle of her helmet, which which the descriptive audio, which is how I noticed it, descriptive audio specifically calls out as being feathers. So that's a relic from when she was uh with Ahsoka before, almost certainly, because it's a reference to Morai, the little owl that likes to follow Ahsoka around after the daughter infused her with forciness. But if that's something that's on the minds of Filoni and other writers or asset people still, like maybe we'll see a bit more of some of the daughter mysticism coming back, or have some of the Morai stuff from Rebels come into it a bit more as well. So that might be something to keep a bit of an eye on. But I think that is everything I wanted to talk about with the show. Do we know what happened to Morai? I don't think anything bad happened to her. Like, she was in the world between worlds. I assume she just follows Ahsoka around wherever she wants. So, but yeah, so I am going to be doing a live reaction to episode 4. I did that on this channel this week, but I think what I'm going to do is potentially do those on Twitch, as I'll normally be streaming Tuesday nights on Twitch regardless, and rather than set up a different stream here, which are usually going to be more relaxed, more low-key, and less focused anyways, it makes more sense to just kind of do that on Twitch. So that's twitch.tv/Corey Loses. Later tonight on youtube.com/Corey Loses, I will be doing the start of a Starfield playthrough. Me and Ak are each going to be playing, so we'll be in a call together, and we'll be playing through the first parts of the game. If you want to check that out, I just need to make sure that my embargo doesn't preclude me from playing when everyone else is playing, because Bethesda gave me the key. It'd be weird if you can't play it until after other people already are for that. But anyways, that'll be in a little while. What do you think of Ahsoka doing some extra vehicular fighting lightsaber combat? I was kind of just talking about it a few minutes ago, but like I enjoyed the banter it led to. I don't know that it makes the most sense as a strategy, though I don't know that she had much else she could really do. So I thought it was kind of neat, but also just at that limit of like, okay, maybe we don't need to do this. But seeing her spinning around afterwards and saying, "Now get me," that made it all worth it. But thank you all for listening. Hopefully we'll be back with Justin next week as well, especially if it's a bigger episode. We'll try to plan the review time or the stream time around making sure he's actually there.